A major legal battle is brewing in the United States, one that could have far-reaching consequences for the way public schools operate and how they represent their communities. At the heart of the issue is a debate that could reshape public schools nationwide, affecting students, teachers, and families in every state. The controversy centers on the use of Native American names, symbols, and imagery as school mascots, a practice that has sparked passionate arguments on both sides for decades. Recently, New York's statewide ban on these mascots has triggered a fierce legal challenge, drawing national attention and now heading toward the U.S. Supreme Court for a potentially landmark decision. The Native American Guardians Association, or NAGA, is leading the charge against the ban. They argue that the law is discriminatory, singling out Native American imagery for removal, while mascots like the Fighting Irish or Vikings are allowed to remain, raising questions about fairness and cultural representation. At stake are fundamental questions of free speech, equal protection under the law, and who gets to decide how cultures and histories are portrayed in public schools. The debate is about more than just mascots. It's about identity, respect, and the values we teach the next generation. For some students, alumni, and community members, these mascots are a source of pride and tradition, representing school spirit and a sense of belonging that spans generations. For others, especially many Native Americans, these images are painful reminders of stereotyping, cultural appropriation, and a long history of marginalization that continues to affect their communities today. As the case advances through the courts, it forces communities across the country to confront difficult questions about history, identity, and the power of symbols to unite or divide us. The Supreme Court's eventual ruling could set a national precedent, shaping how public institutions engage with Native American culture and how we balance tradition with respect for all Americans. The legal fight began with New York's 2023 rule banning Native American mascots in public schools. The Board of Regents argued these symbols create a hostile environment and perpetuate stereotypes, regardless of intent. Schools were given a deadline to change mascots and remove old logos. The state's position: schools must ensure all students feel respected and safe. Native organizations like the NCAI have long campaigned against such mascots, citing research on their negative effects on Native youth. Yet many communities saw the ban as erasing local history and identity, sparking immediate opposition. This clash between state authority and local tradition set the stage for a constitutional showdown. NAGA quickly became the leading opponent of New York's ban. They argue that removing Native mascots erases visibility and pride, and that respectful representation can educate and honor Native culture. NAGA claims the ban is discriminatory, singling out Native imagery while allowing other ethnic mascots. They believe decisions should be made locally, in partnership with tribes, not by state mandate. NAGA's approach, reclaim and re-educate, calls for more accurate, respectful mascots, not elimination. This puts them at odds with most Native advocacy groups, who see all race-based mascots as harmful. For NAGA, the fight is about civil rights and the right to be represented in public spaces. Supporters of the ban argue that Native mascots are dehumanizing, reducing cultures to stereotypes. The NCAI and other groups say these images harm Native students' self-esteem and create hostile school environments. They point out that mascots often misuse sacred symbols, showing disrespect, regardless of intent. Pro-ban advocates compare it to using religious figures as mascots. Most would find that offensive. For them, the ban is about social justice and moving beyond a colonial past. Removing mascots isn't erasing history, but ending the celebration of painful stereotypes. The goal ensures Native Americans are seen as living, diverse people, not caricatures. The ban is a step toward dignity and inclusion. The debate's impact is clear in Massapequa, Long Island, where the high school's Chiefs mascot is a source of pride. Supporters say the name honors local Native history. The town's name itself is Algonquian. They argue removing the mascot erases a visible connection to indigenous roots. But local tribal leaders, like the Shinnecock Nation, support the ban, saying the imagery and fan behaviors are harmful. They call for teaching real Native history, not using stereotypes as logos. The Massapequa conflict mirrors the national debate tradition versus social change, local pride versus cultural harm. NAGA cites Massapequa as an example of state overreach stripping communities of identity. The fate of the chiefs now rests with the courts. NAGA's lawsuit was dismissed in federal district court for lack of standing. The judge said NAGA hadn't shown direct harm. In legal terms, standing means a party must demonstrate a concrete and particularized injury to bring a case. Without this, courts often refuse to hear the matter regardless of its broader implications. For NAGA, this was a major setback, but not the end of the road. Determined to keep fighting, NAGA appealed to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. In their appeal, they argued that the ban on Native American mascots directly harms their members and undermines their mission to preserve cultural heritage. The appellate process is a critical opportunity to present new arguments and clarify the impact of the law. This appeal is a crucial step. The Supreme Court rarely hears cases not first decided by an appellate court. The appellate court's decision can shape the legal landscape and influence whether the Supreme Court will take up the case at all. NAGA's vow to take the case to the Supreme Court is both a legal and strategic move. By announcing their intent, they rally supporters, attract media attention, and generate crucial funding for what could be a lengthy legal battle. Public support can be vital in high-profile cases like this. The Supreme Court receives thousands of petitions each year, but hears only a select few, usually those with major constitutional questions or issues of national importance. The odds are long, but the stakes are high. NAGA believes their 14th Amendment claim, arguing for equal protection under the law, is significant enough to warrant the High Court's attention. They hope the justices will see the broader implications for civil rights and cultural expression. If the case is accepted, it could set a national precedent, affecting not just one state, but schools and communities across the country. The decision could influence how similar cases are handled in the future. Until then, the legal journey continues through the appeals process, with both sides preparing their arguments and gathering evidence. Each step brings new challenges and opportunities for both NAGA and their opponents. The outcome could reshape how schools nationwide handle Native American imagery, potentially changing policies, traditions, and the way communities engage with their own histories. The outcome of this case could ripple across the country. If NAGA wins, New York's ban would likely be struck down, making similar bans nationwide difficult to enforce. Schools might restore retired mascots, and policies targeting Native imagery could be challenged as unconstitutional. If the courts uphold the ban, states would have strong legal backing to retire Native mascots, accelerating a national trend. Such a ruling would validate decades of advocacy by groups like the NCAI. Either way, the decision will set a powerful precedent for cultural representation in public education. The stakes are high for schools, Native communities, and civil rights nationwide. This Supreme Court battle is about more than mascots. It's a pivotal moment in the ongoing struggle over cultural identity and the power to define how Native Americans are seen in the public eye. At its core, this case is about identity, history, and the fundamental question of who gets to decide how cultures are represented in our schools, sports, and communities. On one side stands the call for dignity, respect, and self-determination, values that many Native Americans and their allies have fought for over generations. This movement is strongly supported by most tribal governments, who argue that only Native voices should shape how their cultures are portrayed. On the other side, NAGA and its supporters claim that mascot bans erase Native visibility and infringe on equal rights, insisting that these symbols can honor heritage if used respectfully. The Native community itself is divided, with some seeing mascots as harmful stereotypes, while others view them as a source of pride, reflecting just how complex and deeply personal this issue is. The Supreme Court's ruling will have lasting effects, setting a precedent that could influence laws and policies across the country for years to come. The decision could either reopen the door to controversial imagery in schools and sports teams, or fuel claims of government overreach and spark new debates about the limits of state power. Regardless of the outcome, this case has already ignited a national conversation about respect, education, and what authentic representation truly means for indigenous peoples. The central question remains, how should America honor its indigenous peoples? In symbols that risk perpetuating stereotypes, or through truth, action, and meaningful partnerships that uplift Native voices and histories? The answer will shape the relationship between public institutions and Native communities, influencing how future generations understand, respect, and connect with the rich cultures and histories of America's First Peoples.